back again talking about how we met or how we came together. And to my left, a lighter shade of brown, is Brian Romney.
Hello.
And to my right is
the bester shade of lesbian.
yes, the one that well, if you follow the Rainbow Brick Road, this is what you're gonna see right here.
Yeah.
So I think this time we're gonna talk about how we met or how we came together. I think, and then
Sure.
the differences, because each of us are in different stages of our recovery, I guess, if what have you. So you two weren't around.
Our recovery. Are you ready to admit that it's an injury?
No, it's not an injury.
Oh, this motherfucker. Okay, Brian.
Yeah.
Last time we had a chit chat, he says it's. What did you even say? It's an injury. I have to say it's an injury. What do you call it?
A disability.
He says he has a disability. He doesn't say he has an injury. And your thoughts on that would be what? Oh my gosh, today, Junior.
No, well, I'm trying to think what I'm going to say. Well, I think it is a disability. And the reason I say that is because
Oh, you guys, you're killing me.
So
the reason I say that is because it's not going away. So if it was an injury implies you can get better, which I think to a degree you can, but I deal daily with the symptoms of this. And so that's why I don't like saying disability because it has a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
But I can't be scared of that because I have it.
What's the negativity? If somebody loses their leg, they're disabled. Why is that negative? It's what they are. And here's...
I think that
because you're talking about a mental, because you're talking mental, which means
So-
where's your baseball, Warren? Because it makes me feel like there's...
So let me see.
Hold on. This goes back into the shame that you talked about.
It is.
How
It is.
And I think you not wanting to say disability as opposed to injury is you looking in the mirror saying, I'm still that strong person.
I am not disabled.
I'm a doer. I can do whatever I want. And in contrast to your diagnosis. So I think that it's not fun to look at as far as your diagnosis, and you're just renaming it.
Well, I know, but no, you can't say that because officers that have not been diagnosed with PTSD or acute stress or whatever, have not been diagnosed. If you're telling them you're going to be disabled, that's not. I don't feel good about that.
That's a mental hurdle you have to get over. For me, and that's my opinion. So for me to be able to debate this with you, the easiest way I can articulate it is that an injury in your current status would basically imply that at some point you can no longer be accommodated by the department because you don't fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that they can say you are no longer injured. Now get back to that black and white and go do the job. A disability allows you to ask for accommodations because you're covered under the ADA. If it's an injury, like I've heard so many people say before, they're like, oh, it's just PTSI. And I'm like, wait, what? Let me explain something to you. After I retired, I tried to go back to work in a civilian capacity. If it was labeled an injury, I wouldn't have got the accommodations to have my service dog there to function first and foremost so that people didn't come up behind me and scared the living shit out of me. I wouldn't have been granted those accommodations because I had an injury. Somebody twists their ankle or breaks their ankle, it's an injury. They say, oh, you're healed, go back to work. But if you do a compound fracture to that ankle, you get a disability rating, which means that if you try to go back to a job, you have a disability rating that says you cannot do certain things based on that disability. That's where my argument is when it comes to PTSD being an injury or disability. I can tell you that 5 years out, having gone into a civilian job to try to be around civilians that are in their land of butterfly and cloud nine, they, you know what, let me tell you, they like on birthdays, they like to get poppers, right? And they like to jump out behind people and say surprise. Well, guess what that does to me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My injury, if I go off your analogy or your choice of words, your vernacular, if you will, I'm not allowed to be frightened because it's just an injury. And I can't go to HR and say, look, these people can't do this. And if they want to, because I don't want to mess up their world, don't get me wrong, but I need to be able to be removed from that. And I need justification so that my job is protected to say, look, if you're going to be jumping out on people, that's cool, but I need to not be part of that world for the time being.
Yeah.
And
it makes sense in that it makes that I'm not 5 years out, so maybe I'm not as well-rounded as you boys are. But
well, what would you say if the department came and said, "Hey, guess what, T? Your injury, you need to get back in that seat."
I can't.
Okay, but if you're injured and the doctors are saying now you're healed, then you need to go back or shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, and that could happen.
It could, but under current vernacular, you have a disability. And because of that, you're covered under the ADA. So that means that your doctor can say you have to accommodate her because she was injured on the job, which led to a disability.
Okay.
Right? Because look, if you got shot in the line of duty, like we all have partners or officers that have been shot, if you get shot in the line of duty, you're injured. But if you lose movement in your arm or you have limited liability in your hands, you're now deemed disabled. Doesn't mean you have to quit. It just means they have to accommodate you. We have plenty of officers on our department that were injured physically that were deemed certain percentage of disabled, which means they can no longer drive a black and white.
Yeah.
Right? And if they take that away, not just PTSD standards, but if they take that away from them saying, "Oh, it's just an injury," then they don't have to accommodate them. Right now,
that makes sense.
At any time they can come to you and say, "Oh, it's an injury." Doctor says you're good to go back. Go back. ADA is not going to cover you because you're saying it's not a disability because you don't want that tag.
Yeah, I don't want the tag.
Mm-mm.
I don't want it. I
None
don't
of
want any
us
of this
do.
shit.
I don't think anybody does.
No one does.
But
Yeah.
okay, so my brother lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. Wasn't on duty, had nothing to do with his job. But now, by definition, it's a disability. Okay? So now he gets a special parking permit. I can guarantee you he probably didn't want that either.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's the nature of the injury. How severe was that injury? In my opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that I know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, in my mind, why are you taking away something that is debilitating to me? Okay? 5 years out, and I want to kill eggs. Okay? Who does that?
Well, I'm not saying it's not the worst injury I've ever had, because it sure as hell is the worst injury. All right. Maybe in a couple of years I'll be able to say I'm disabled, but as of right now, I'm gonna fight you on it. I'm gonna fight you.
It's not.
Do you anticipate it? Do you anticipate getting better and going back to that car?
Nope.
Okay. But that's a mindset. But let's say your doctor step in and say you can no longer do the duties of a police officer. They've now deemed you disabled. They did, not you. Because in my mind, there's been plenty of times I'm like, "Hey, give me that entry vest. Let's kick this door."
I think that's what it is. It's definitely a state of mind that you're saying I'm disabled and can't do something. Yeah, I might not be able to do that and maybe some other little things along the way, but I get it. Let's move along.
Hey, you brought it up.
Oh,
Thanks.
sorry.
All right, so we'll come back to that when you are not.
I'm calm.
So, talking about meeting, you guys weren't there when
I
went to the
forgot we were talking about how
first
we met.
meeting. I wasn't there.
Let's start it over.
You guys weren't there when I was at that first meeting, but what I recall, and maybe we should save my start for when Dave was around. But yeah, shit, I didn't want to be in that room. And I tell the guys and gals that come in all the time, I'm like, to this day, I would have never called pistol. As bad as it sounds, but I gotta be honest. So I got a lot of respect for the guys and gals that did. But I was around when both of you guys came through pistols. So
let's talk about Brian first.
So before we talk about me,
oh God,
for those that are new listeners, we are members of a group called Pistol, which is Post-Incident Stress and Trauma in Law Enforcement. And what we do is anonymous peer support for police officers who are suffering from acute stress or post-traumatic stress. That is part of the job. And so right now we're kind of talking about how, when we all came to this group, how we were, or what we looked like, and kind of how we met. And
I was skinnier. I was skinnier because I was still able to work out and do some stuff and get in a car, stuff like that.
That you remember.
But you were a real mess. I remember the first day you came in, when you kind of just, it was foreign to you, and you sat there in your chair and were kind of like, made yourself as small as you could in that chair.
Oh my God, dude. Being in that room was like being underwater. I know that you guys were there, and I know what I was there for, but it was seriously like everything was muffled, and you guys were talking, and I think I wanted to explode and just let something out, let it all out, but there was no fucking way that I was going to tell any of you what was going on with me.
Well, let's.
I just wasn't.
You guys jumped ahead a little bit, so I'm the one that fielded the phone call from you.
Oh Jesus!
And it was funny because to this day, nobody gave me fair warning.
Oh, no one told you that I was calling?
No one told me you were calling, and to my own detriment, I guess, is part of the vetting process for Pistol that I'm in charge of. The phone rings, and I answer it like I always do, and on the other end, I hear you say, "Is this Pistol?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Pistol." And you say, "Well, this is blah, 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 first and last name, and I'm with this department." And I'm thinking to myself, we work together. Do you remember this conversation? And I was like, it's me. That? Yeah. I go, "Hey, T, it's me." And you were like, "Well, I'm supposed to call Pistol." And I'm like, "It's me." Do you know who you're talking to? And it probably took you about 30 seconds to figure out that who you were talking to was the same person that you had worked with on the streets and everything. And then I said, "Hey, let's meet up before group so I can get you prepared for group."
Yeah. And
we met at the Starbucks, and
I recall being a little bit of a mess.
You were a lot of bit of mess. And it was difficult because, like we had talked in the previous podcast with me, it was really hard for me to hold that space for you because I wanted to break down, right? Because I don't want to see my partners in the same fucked up situation that I was in. And yet here I am sitting across from somebody who I worked with fairly recent when we were in patrol.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I didn't know who you were. And so we always worked well together. But here I am now staring at somebody who's going down the same thing. And part of why we created Pistol was so that it didn't happen again. And now I have a partner who's coming back. And this partner doesn't recognize who they're talking to on the phone. That's how,
didn't have a clue.
In crisis you were. And then we get to where Brian was talking about. So go ahead. I just wanted to give that pre-part. But
you act like I remember what I was talking about.
Oh God. Oh God.
So you sitting in there balling up in the chair.
Yeah, and I remember how disturbed you were. I mean, you could tell that you had this internal struggle that you were dealing with, and I recognize it because I've been there. I mean, I was in your shoes, and that's the cool thing about Pistol is as you progress, you can see new people come in that are struggling and see yourself in them and actually see some of your own growth. And I definitely could see myself in you, just internal struggle and wanting help, but not knowing what you're getting yourself into, and then being surrounded with a whole bunch of people you didn't know. But the only thing that you did know is that they were all cops.
Yeah.
And they all knew or had some sort of similar feelings as you. Or, I mean, I really didn't even know when I came to the group what it was. It just I was invited.
I don't think I knew either. My doctor said, "Hey, you might want to look into this group," and I'm a rule follower. So she says I should do this. Then okay, I will do anything
to make these feelings go away.
I will do anything. Yeah. So yeah, I'll make this phone call, and I'll sit in this room full of whoever these fuckers are that are just we're making me feel terrible.
Yeah, and then we get to you, like, "You got anything you want to say?" And it was just tears, tears. And that set the standard for you for many times after.
That's all I did the first meeting?
Oh yeah.
You talked a little bit.
You talked
about
a little bit, but the way I remember, Brian may be different, but I remember a lot of tears, a lot of not being able to make sense of what was going on.
Oh my God.
And it's funny because having been there from the beginning, we see that all the time. You guys see that all the time now, where people come in and it's only happening to you. Like you don't understand.
Right.
But it's only happening to me.
They come in with that belief that no one understands them, and they sit down in group because who knows? Maybe they're at their wits' end and this is their last effort to get better or whatever, grabbing at straws. And then they get introduced to this group and they don't have to explain anything because we all know exactly what they're talking about. And that's a kind of a liberating thing that I found when I first came to the group. I started talking about, my anxiety and my inability to be around people and the overwhelming noises that were making my head hurt,
Yeah.
And everyone in there is shaking their head. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I didn't have to explain it because they got it. And it was awesome to feel that, to know that I don't have to explain it, because for my wife, she had no idea what I was going through. All she knew is that I was sitting on the couch, not functioning, couldn't make a decision, scared of my shadow, couldn't think straight, was half the time not even hearing anything that was going on, just staring at the wall. And she had no idea what was going on with me. And anytime I told her, I had to explain it because she just didn't understand. And so when I got into this group, that I could talk freely about the feelings that I had inside, and everyone understood. It was awesome.
Did Brian, when he first came in, Manny, did Brian look anything like me? Like, did he come in and talk the first group?
No. He
I talked.
He talked, because he was the last one to go. But I remember when he's saying, because another member brought him in, because you went to West Coast.
I went to West Coast.
So that's how I think it was part of the 90-day plan to come back, right? Is that how you?
No, I didn't.
Or you just came back because?
So the person who referred me shared a doctor that with you guys. He went and saw Dr. Tapia, and she was at the West Coast retreat with me, and at that point I was willing to do anything to feel better, because as a police officer you show up to a call, you fix it, or you arrest someone and you leave,
right?
And that's what I wanted. I wanted someone to fix me in 5 minutes, and then
move on to the next one.
Then go back to work. That's what I expected. I expected them. You fix me, and I'll go back to work. And that's what I wanted. I wanted anyone to just fix me. And so, when I got referred to Pistol, I was like, yeah, I'll do anything to not feel like I feel.
Yep.
And so I showed up, and I remember just like you, I was as small as I could be. I was in the back of the room.
Yeah. He had his arms crossed.
That's what I see about the people now. Like, I'm able to sit in the room and I can see the legs shaking, like they're holding it in, and then they don't,
Well, because you think they're going to make a beeline for the door.
Well, yeah. They want to explode. You can see that they need to explode, and that something has to come out. And then they get you. They're like, "You want to say anything?" And they're like, "Nope,
nope, it's over. Let's go." Got concrete ass. I can't get off the chair.
Yeah,
yeah. And with Brian, it's funny because when he came in, I remember sitting there and I was looking, and I was like, "Man, this poor dude probably had his lunch money taken from him." That's how he was tucked in the corner. I was like,
"Sissy."
Yeah, I was like, "What's up with that guy over there?" But it's funny because as time went on, and we didn't I don't think we asked you guys a lot of questions. We let you talk because the questions would confuse you. So we just let you guys talk.
Everything confused me.
Yeah. And so we didn't ask any questions. We just let you talk and go about your business. But I think Brian, of all the members that had started coming more and more, he was the fastest to absorb all the stuff that was going on, because it was very short time between I started thinking, man, that poor kid that I thought was going to have his lunch money taken is really more part of what I was, you know, we had a lot of things in common. Like I was like, man, this dude, he knows about war, you know, and I'm not talking about war like fighting. I'm talking about like the band war, you know, and the group war, you know, and I'm like, dude, you know about these things? And we talked about The Godfather one time or something.
Talked about gangs.
And I was like, man, this dude. So, you know,
I spoke Spanish to you.
Yeah.
You listened to Maná.
Yeah. He's an honorary Chicano over here.
I got salsa in my blood.
And so, I mean, it's weird because he came in and just really flourished with what was in front of him.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that. I think we see that a lot when we go through everybody coming in. And the more that people listen and do, like you said, rule follower.
Yeah.
You know, we tell you to reach out. The more you put in the work, the faster you get better, I think. And I've seen it.
The faster you get results.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to get... If you pretend like you don't have a problem or that there's no issues, it's only going to get worse. And that's what got us where we are. We had critical incidents over and over and over again in our careers. And we just said, yeah, it doesn't bother me. Or I'm okay. I'm good.
Yeah.
And then it gets to a point where you're not good. And I try and tell people, it's okay to not be okay, you know?
Well, but you can't not be okay when you're on the streets and when you're with your squad and when you're with the guys at it's the, you know, it's just how it is in the police department.
Well, that's the culture.
That's the culture, which needs to change.
It does.
But can you imagine sitting around and talking about having PTSD with your squad or whatever?
Well, not only PTSD, just the symptoms of it, you know, like not sleeping. You know, when you go on a bad call, Manny and I always joke around about this. It's like you go to a drowning or a stabbing or some terrible call, and instead of talking about your feelings or what you just saw or how you can deal with it, you say, hey man, have you had lunch yet? No, let's go. And you just go to lunch, and do you talk about it? No, you don't talk about it.
No.
And that's the culture that the first responders have, is to not talk about it, you know, to pretend like it doesn't exist, compartmentalize it. And those are all the wrong things to do. So,
well, because I don't think you know it's going to affect you at that point. We go to fatals, you don't know. The problem is that, like Brian's talking about, you jump a wall, and I jump the wall with you, and you're holding your ankle, and it's a good fracture. I'm going to say we need to get you to the hospital. You're like, yeah, please do. But if we go to a fatal, and it's got kids in it, and maybe some dismemberment, we don't say the same thing.
No,
we don't say that, and I don't think we even ask for that, because I think you'd be hard pressed to convince me that if you were on anything that had to do with a child, that it's not going to stay with you for a minute, at the least, right? Yeah. It's just a minute if it's going to stay with you, because everybody remembers the exciting calls. It's like both ends of the spectrum. I remember that time we got in that pursuit and we chased this dude and wrecked, and then we ran and then we tackled him. But you can also say the same thing about the bad calls. Right? You remember that call, like another officer of ours, who you know very well, we were on a dead body, and I talk about that all the time because I remember it. It didn't mess with me. I don't think about the call. It was one of the bad calls that was cool because we see the unseeable, right? Like that's part of what we do, but that's the culture that we have to tell people, hey, somebody needs to say this is going to leave a mark.
Yeah.
Like it's going to sting a little bit. Because in the academy, we don't get that. I think I got 2 hours in the academy about mental health and the calls that stick with you. And everybody just kind of glazed over it.
Right. I think that I've gotten so good at putting things away when I've seen them, that I've put them away so good that I cannot remember shit anymore. I can't remember the calls. I can't remember, like, you know, I had 13 years patrol, and unless someone brings something up and they say, hey, you remember that call when you, no, I got nothing, dude. Like, I cannot remember.
That might be just the fact that we were part of the greatest show on earth, because my career was the day I started, 2 calls in between, and the day I retired. And I don't know that that's the PTSD. I think it's just so much shit. Like, I try to think of how much stuff I saw in a 40-hour week in 4 days, and it blows my mind.
Much. Yeah.
There's just too much to remember. I don't know how many accidents I went to in 4 days, in 10 hours.
Well, I'm glad I can't remember. I'm real glad I can't remember. Like I'm okay with it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm definitely okay with not remembering
some of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when we like getting back to on topic of how we met and what we look like, it's the mask. I talk about sometimes. Dave and I will talk about before I had PTSD. All cops look the same. You know, there's a cop right there. He's got, you know, back in the day, fanny pack with a gun in it, or, you know, they wore the tactical belt with the triangle and pull it. You know, you knew.
So you're saying you could pick out a cop in a crowd?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now I see it different. I can still pick out the cop in the crowd, but now I see the messed up cops. Right? It's like they walk in and I'm like, oh, that dude's messed up right there. That girl's messed up, right? And because you see it in their face. It's in it, whatever their soul looked like in their eyes was removed and now replaced with this hollowness that I see. It's just hollow.
That's because you've lived it.
Yeah.
And your eyes are
like
open.
it's like looking in a mirror sometimes. And I don't want to say that I got good at it, but there's times where I'll be out and about and I'll see an officer and I'll hand that officer the pistol card because I know he's fucked up. Or she's messed up, you know, and you see it. And just like with you guys, have you guys coming in, you see it. And that's why we don't ask the questions. And you guys are good at that too. Brian was really good as he progressed in his whatever recovery or getting better. He started to then ask these people, hey, what brought you here? He asked the questions, hey, what about this? And those questions, they're meaningful. Because we don't ask those questions. That's part of the hardest thing is just reaching out and ask somebody, what do you do when you can't sleep?
Yeah.
And I get that all the time. I just got a call from another state, and she asked me, she's like, I was told that you hear screams. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, what do you do like to just keep your sanity? I'm like, well, in the beginning, I put headphones on. She's like, shit, headphones? I didn't think about that.
Oh, God.
You know,
It
but because, well, yeah, but you know, you're in panic mode because, like Brian said, you're looking for the magic pill to make it all better.
Yeah.
As fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a magic pill. Since we're on that subject, before you got injured, and someone came to you and said, "Hey, dude, you're messed up. You need to get on some medication." What would you say?
Jump in a lake.
I'm not messed up.
I don't.
You're not messed up.
I'd say I wasn't messed up.
I'm not putting
You
that
don't
crap
need
on
a
my
pill?
body. No
Okay.
way.
Because that was one of the things, because I wasn't sleeping, and I was getting up, grabbing my gun for no reason. Like, what is going on? Until somebody that was a police officer said to me, hey, you need to contact this doctor and you need some medication. But until they said, I'm on medication too, you know, I take it for anxiety and this happened to me, then it was okay for me. Then it was okay. I was like, oh, well, if you take meds, then I should be able to take meds. And I guarantee that was one of the best things I did, was take medications to sleep.
Well, I wasn't ever opposed to medication. You know, if I had a headache, I'd take Excedrin. It stands to reason.
Different.
Well, no, I'm saying, but when the time came for me to take medication, the very first time I sat down with the nurse practitioner and I told her I'm hearing these fucking screams in my head, and she's like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna give you an antipsychotic." I was like, "What are you talking about?" But she's like, "It'll help you sleep," and I'm like, "Give it to me. I'll take it like Pez."
It'll help you sleep, but that means temporary. Okay,
Right.
So this is you're now telling me I'm crazy, so I need to be on medications because I'm crazy. Yikes! Ain't nobody crazy here.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that I didn't want to tell anybody. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I would have taken it. The thing that really got me set off was when they gave me my cocktail of medication, which then in turn my wife to go get me a nice pill box of every day of the week, as well as AM and PM. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not 95 years old and I don't need reminders. Now, that was a totally different story. If they would have came to me and said, just take this one pill, you'll not hear the screams and sleep.
Done.
I would have taken it, no
Correct.
problem. And I probably would have told you, I'm on these pills because I can't sleep. I think mine was a little bit different. I always followed that stupid little thing on the walls that says, if you need help, call these people. One of the things that I tell people is like, look, when I was in a fight by myself, you damn right I keyed that mic and asked for more units. So when I needed help, I asked for it. And that's where it came in that I was betrayed because they didn't give it to me. I
know, but you said you would have never called Pistol.
Yeah, but that was more of the shame issue with going to what I think of what I absolutely didn't want was like an AA.
Nobody wants
right. AA. And that's why I say I wouldn't call Pistol. But overall, like, your medical background was never anybody's business. So if I needed meds because I had a migraine, I just went and got meds, but I didn't go and advertise that to the people in the department. So when it came to my screams, I just figured the same thing. I hear screams. No one on the department has to know. I just need to go to the doctor. They're going to give me a pill to get better, and I go about my business.
Right.
And then if somebody did say, it's kind of like migraine. I have migraine. Oh, I took these meds. It worked. Well, eventually what happened was over Pistol, somebody's like, I can't sleep. And I'm like, well, I took temazepam, and it shuts everything off, and I pretty much die for 8 hours, and then I wake up.
And then I'm good again.
And then I'm good again, because that's exactly what happened when I went to the nurse practitioner. She's like, you're going to take this antipsychotics called Risperidone. You need to sleep. And I look at first thing I do, because it's what cops do. I go to the internet, Google Risperidone.
Oh, yeah.
Side effects. And what do I see? Number one thing of Risperidone, drooling. And I'm like, what did they just give me?
Wait, you looked it up before you took it or after you took it?
No, before.
Okay.
And I'm like, what? And so I take the Risperidone and I go to sleep. And again, I'm pretty much dead for 6-7 hours. And I wake back up. Well, I'm in a puddle of drool.
Well, aren't you glad you looked that up beforehand?
Yes, but I woke up and I was so happy and refreshed. My anger was like 90% less because I got sleep. And that's part of what we tell people. Like, you need to sleep.
Absolutely.
And you need that shut off. And what Risperidone did was it shut it off. Well, what I didn't realize was part of that side effect of drooling was not only when you sleep. So because I took Risperidone for a couple years, I still drew, and I have to carry a handkerchief.
Are you kidding?
No,
I have never seen you wipe your drool.
No.
I used to for a while, yeah. I still have them. Ask Anna. And now what I do is I take...
Oh, my gosh.
What I do is, you guys probably don't pay attention, but I'll take chapstick and I'll put it around my lips. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just wipe the corner of my mouth, or I'll swipe like this.
Oh, I have seen you do that.
Because
you're wiping drool?
Yeah, because it's drool.
Oh, my God.
because totally again, with the shame, you don't want to look like a 95-year-old man taking out your snot rag and wiping your drool. You know, and part of the... and you know, I tell people, I would have taken... Brian sent something out about which pill are you going to take, the red pill or the blue pill. Blue pill makes you go here.
Matrix.
Yeah, somebody...
The Matrix, yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I thought about that is because, like, when you first go to Pistol, it's like, do you really want to go down the rabbit hole and talk about, you know, the things that are inside, or do you want to take the red pill? Take the red pill and just pretend like you're not in the Matrix. You know, it's like, and that's the idea I got is like, hey, you're faced with that decision when you show up. Is like, are you going to keep pretending that you don't have this inside, or are you going to do something about it? And so that's the part that for Pistols, like, I hope when people show up that they can see the value in it and make a choice to look at those demons, you know,
and to come back, because there's a lot of people that don't come back.
You know, you're dancing with demons at that point. I don't know any career that gives you the ability to both be in heaven and hell in any particular moment. You know,
and from call to call.
Yeah, from call to call. Like,
right.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, we have an all-access pass to heaven and hell. I mean, one moment, I'm saving somebody's life. In one moment, I'm helping a little girl find her lost dog. Or, you know, like, people make a big stink about setting up lemonade stands and buying lemonade. We used to do that all the time. Like, Dobson Ranch, they'd put up lemonade, and then we'd send it out on the DXT, and everybody... And the lemonade was bad, right? Like, it didn't even taste good. But then and I would always tell the boy or girl, I'm like, hey, the next officer comes up, it's $1.50. I only paid 50 cents, but you charge that dude $1.50, right? That's the heaven part of it, because you get to help them and you're happy.
Yeah.
But
Right.
then in one swift hot tone, you're picking up a dead body of a 2-year-old, you know, and now you're in hell. And then even when I talk about the detectives that work kitty crimes, they're in the basement of hell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're in what hell puts in the basement.
Oh,
You know, and
I wouldn't do that job for nothing.
No.
and so you trying to get into these, and then we've had it where officers have come in and they've heard Dave's story and they're like, hey, I don't want to talk. And I'm like, bro, you were in kitty crimes, right? Like, I understand that there's a incident envy to some point, but yeah, losing your partner and being shot is really bad. That's in the basement of hell. But when you have to on view or watch something that occurs to that level, you're in the same thing. Get out of that mindset of incident envy. It doesn't matter if you got in a shooting or you hear screams, you're in a bad place.
Yeah.
And having seen so many officers come through and go by, it doesn't matter if you're tall, short, gay, straight, what religion you are, you're going to be affected by the demons that we dance with on a daily basis, whether it's 1 year, whether it's 30 years, could be 35 years. And it's important that we say you can, I don't know, you don't like the word recover, what you get better, it's not terminal.
You learn how to cope.
You understand what your triggers are. You don't do those things. You have a good support system. Like, you don't call your buddies who aren't messed up and say, I'm having a bad night, and they say, let's go drink a 12-pack.
Yeah.
You know, you call somebody who knows that you shouldn't drink your try to self-medicate it away and say, look, instead of a 12-pack, we'll just have 2 and break bread and call it good and calm down those edges. Or like I've done so many times with you, I'm like, having a bad day, let's go have a cigar.
Yeah.
You know, an hour burn on a cigar, it goes, because then we talk about nothing.
We really don't talk
Yeah,
about anything, but it's okay.
Yeah. And that's what we need. I think that's going back to what you look like. Part of that evolution is getting it out, vomiting all that vile stuff that we have, that we see, that you can't take home.
Yep.
And getting it out and being able to articulate it and not be ashamed of the fact that you were bothered by this incident.
Yeah.
Whether it be screams in your head, whether it's your partner that was killed, whether it was a family that was killed, whether it was your partner that was killed or you thought was killed. That stuff needs to be spit up, because if you hold it, it's toxic and you're going to deteriorate.
It builds up.
Yeah.
The toxicity is just going to take over and it's going to ruin you from the inside out.
Do you guys, with your being as far after your incident as it has been, does this sitting around, going to group, sitting around talking like this, what does it do to you? Because it's the same thing going to work right now for me, reading police reports and seeing police all day and doing whatever. I get home from work and I'm spent. Like, I used to be able to get up early, do whatever all day, go to work, then come home, and I was up all the time, but it just takes it out of me now. Like, I get so tired, and now that I'm able to sleep, I do it more. Like, I can pretty much sleep 12 hours and not be bothered. And it seriously, does it do that to you guys? Is that something that you guys are dealing with or
Yeah.
have dealt with?
Yeah, it is. And a lot of it is the anxiety that I feel inside. You know, I'm constantly battling with something inside, whether it's anxiety or anger or mostly it's just anxiety and anger. And a lot of times I don't know why. I can't point to a specific reason why they feel that way, but I'm always trying not to make overreact, I guess, because there's times where my anger is so strong that I'll give you an example. The other day I came home and the front door was locked, and I wanted to break the door down because it was locked. And my thought was, why is this door locked?
Your front door to your house?
Yeah,
It should be locked.
it should be locked, right?
Safety
But
first,
the
Brian.
problem is something inside didn't it didn't compute. I didn't have a rational thought. My rational thought at the point was, hey, why isn't my door locked? It should be unlocked. And I'm so mad right now that I'm going to kick my door down. And I had to step back for a second and say, that's not a rational thought. It's not a good idea to kick your own door down just because it's not unlocked. And I have to like rewind. And my day's filled with that. So when it comes time to sleep, I'm happy to shut the lights out. You know what I'm saying?
Like, bring the hooligan.
Because you're exhausted.
I'm exhausted.
That's what I feel. I'm exhausted.
Well, there's a mental battle all day long.
Oh my God.
Well, I think some of that is depression. So the depression on your mind of just dealing with everyday issues. That depressing of your mind. This is just my opinion, but that's what we deal with. Any problem that's brought to us at this level is an extreme problem. Because I guarantee you, if the door was unlocked, Brian'd be pissed off because the door was unlocked and it wasn't safe. Because if it was me and the door's unlocked, I'd be like, why the fuck is the door unlocked? Criminals just come through here? We will find everything is a problem. And
the funny thing is, when you said that, I first thought was, no, I wouldn't. Why would I do that? And then I think, what do I tell my kids when I open the door and they're sitting there watching TV? Bang, you're dead.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So see?
And so I'm
it
like,
would have been the same outcome.
Why aren't you locking the door? And then why is the door locked?
Oh my gosh.
And so but I think the depression and we put so much strain on our minds over and over and over and over again because we have to solve the problems of everybody. When we're first on scene, we have to be the doctor because we have to know how to shut off the blood. If it's a family fight, we have to be the counselor and how to solution it. We have to be the referee. If it's a traffic accident, we have to be the judge on who is number one vehicle, who's number two vehicle. Like all these things have been put on us over and over again. So by the time we get so burned out, any little thing is a problem. We talked about it before, like Dave talked about it in the podcast. When he talked, he's like, somebody asked me, what do you want for dinner?
Oh, God.
What? Dinner? Food. That's what I want. And I think what you're talking about is you're just subjecting yourself to the same part of that world where you got to read these police reports and you got to go in and you got to testify to these things. I don't want to read police reports. I mean, there's times where I see Phoenix running hot and I'm like, man, to be in that seat again, man, running hot, going to solve a problem. And about 10, 15 seconds into it, I'm like, if they're running hot, that's probably paperwork. And if it's paperwork, I don't want paperwork because it's not like the normal job where they give you 5 tasks and tell you to fix the tasks over 5 days.
Oh gosh.
You get a hot call and you take paper. You don't just go put yourself out and write paper. You got to figure out time management and how to get all those papers. I mean, I think at my worst in patrol, I was down 16 reports by my Friday.
Well, I know, but that was never a problem for me. Like I could get through that
before.
I
but eventually that's just going to overload your system and you can't take anymore.
I could do a million things in a day and now I can barely fucking get through the day. And then I have to just crash.
Well, yeah, because what do? Think about it, right? We'd run the radio. We check the DXT. We run our code box. We'd eat our sandwich.
We talk on the cell phone.
Yeah, we talk on the cell phone, right? And then we'd send messages on the CAD. Where's Brian, lazy fucker? It's his beat. And all that would come into play.
Yeah. Sarge, I never did that, by the way.
And so we go through all of these things. And eventually, you can only handle so much. You can only... It doesn't matter what business you're in. I mean, there's businessmen that have killed themselves because of stress. Why would we be any different? We go there to deal with the issues that other people don't want to deal with. And that's what we get paid to do.
Nobody wants to deal
with
those
now
issues.
When you get a normal job, whether it's still in PD or whether it's in the private sector, when I went back, people were like, we have a deadline. The deadline has to be done by the middle of next week. And I'm like, and what happens if it's not? Just out of curiosity. And they were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, let's say it doesn't happen. What happens? Is the company going to shut down? Is someone going to die? Like, what's going to happen if it's not done by the middle of next week?
I wouldn't hire you.
Yeah. And they were like, I don't know. They'll extend the deadline. And I'm like, oh, dear God.
Well, because
deadline.
you're comparing it to a guy being in jail for a felony, and if you don't get the paperwork done, he gets released.
Exactly.
Whereas on a civilian side, there's no accountability.
Just extend the deadline.
Oh, geez.
So those kind of things are, you get a different perspective in that. You're still in the world where it matters, right? If you don't testify correctly, somebody's gonna get, and that's a lot of stuff to deal with. I mean, we did it on such a regular basis. I mean, I would write 2-3 felonies a night in custodies and not have a problem, and I'd come home and go to sleep and not think they're getting released. My Form 4 is fine.
Right.
Now, if I fill out an envelope wrong, I go into panic mode. It's not going to get to them, right? What's going to happen?
You're still filling out envelopes?
No, well, I'm just using
through snail mail?
Yeah, because I know it's going to get there, not lost somewhere else.
Well, part of that is all the mental noise that you have from not taking care of. That's our main deal. Is like you need to purge all these terrible things that you see and do each day, because if not, your cup runs over, and then you have the mental noise and your daily responsibilities, and then it becomes this all day long drama and panic, and so it's hard for you right now to do that because your cup's run over,
and you keep trying that same thing over and over again. And I think even with us, it's hard for our families to discern the difference between Manny just being angry and dad, or Manny being PTSD pissed off, because everything to them is an issue. I mean, there's times where I hear my wife screaming at my son, and I'm like, why are they not freaking out? You're screaming at them louder than I am. I don't know, and I'm like, hey, shut up. And they're like, sorry, Dad, sorry. That's my own fault. And those are things that I have to pay for. But for us, when it comes to what you're talking about, like that heaviness, that weight of wanting to sleep, I think that's depression. That's the depressing of all of the work that you're doing is just weighing you down. It's exhausting, right? I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand what's entailed. My cousin has run a restoration paint company for 35 years. And I'll ask him a question about my truck and the inner workings of it, and he makes it sound like it's the easiest thing in the world, right? And I'm like, God, that sounds so complicated. Even when Brian's helped me with the truck, he's like, oh, let's just take out the speedo cap. I'm like, that sounds so complicated, right? But now take that into context of reading a police report, developing probable cause, and then testifying to a grand jury. That's intimidating to somebody who's never done that. And that's a lot of work. But we do it every day, and it becomes easier and easier, and we get confident in it. But over time, that just depresses on our psyche, on our minds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we want to sleep so much. I mean, the first year I was off, like, I just wanted to sleep. That's all I wanted. I wanted to close my eyes and go to sleep for years.
Yeah. Well, that's what I feel like now, is that I just want to sleep. Like I don't want to go anywhere because I need to sleep.
Because you're exhausted.
Because I'm so tired all the time. And I don't even do anything, because that's why I compare it to that. Call after call after call.
Yeah.
And it's so much slower, yet I still can't handle it. You know what I mean?
Well, the payoff on the call after call after call, I think, was, we'd get a call, delayed burglary, shoplift in progress, but we hung out for the exciting calls. Got a subject with a gun. Well, no, that's mine. You know what I mean? Well, it's in Brian's beat, so I'm just the backup.
Well, it's because we're all addicted to adrenaline. You get that hot call, and it's like, hey, this is it. This is going to be, unfortunately, like 5 minutes of fun and 4 hours of paperwork.
But it was worth
lucky,
it.
Yeah.
It was worth it every time. And that's what we live for. But I think over time, it just takes a toll. And just like anyone else, I mean, there's people I know that are in the construction business for 20 years. And I think, you've been digging ditches and hanging drywall and up and down for 20 years? Like that had to beat the shit out of your body. And then I start thinking about us, and I think about the calls over and over and over, dead bodies, accidents, abuse, that takes a toll on your mind. The same way that if you were just hanging drywall, it affects your body. These calls affect our mind over, and eventually it just takes a toll over and over and over again. And I think that's why when we started earlier talking about not remembering all those calls, my doctor asked me flat out, she's like, I want you to do something called Parade of Faces. And I want you to tell me about, I don't know, 5 or 10 of your worst calls. I had 2.
Two that you could remember?
2 that I could remember. And it took a couple years of therapy for me to finally say, I remembered another call. Right? Like, well, what do you remember? One of the calls that I had to go on that I mean, and we'll talk about this another time, but one of the calls that popped out of nowhere a couple years after I retired was, I think they do this in every academy, but you know, where you're learning CPR, you respond to the call of a non-breather, door swings open and mom hands you a limp baby. My baby's not breathing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That was my call. I was working graveyards, and we get a call of a non-breather. Me and another officer get there. I'm first on scene. He's shortly behind me. I'm walking up the pathway. Door swings open. Mom hands me, my baby's not breathing. Hands me this baby that's cold and stiff.
Oh. And
I'm like, this isn't anything like the academy. Right? So I take this stiff baby who's clearly deceased.
Oh,
and I'm like, where was the baby? And she's like, she was in the crib. So I go into the house. And as I go into the house, I look up and there's a family portrait. And as I look up, one of the people in the family portrait is a rookie officer that just joined our squad.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, this isn't anything like the academy said.
No.
So, you know, these things are, it's constantly burning and burning. And I had completely forgot about that call. Completely forgot about that call. It wasn't until year and a half later that it popped in my head for some reason. And she's like, well, how does it make you feel? I'm like, it doesn't really make me feel like anything. But I remembered it.
Yeah.
You know, and that was, and over time she would give homework and ask questions about, hey, write this down or say this. And I'm like, I don't know why I forgot it. I don't know why I forgot that.
Well, that's a way we protect ourselves.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to talk about is like, we talk about, well, I kind of thought of the analogy of like a sports car. We have a sports car. We're all driving a sports car as a police officer. You know, you're going fast. Sometimes you're going slow. And you put that mileage on that car over and over and over. Well, if you never change your oil, eventually your motor's going to give out, you know. And that's what we hope to change the culture in police work is that, hey, you got to change your oil. You got to let that stuff out. You got to do self-help stuff that's going to...
Maintenance.
Yeah, that's going to get that stuff, you know, get rid of those calls, you know, get rid of some of those terrible things that we see and just get them off your plate. Because if you don't do it, your motor's going to blow up, you know?
You're going to rebuild a motor or get a new one.
Yeah.
God, and I just need a nap.
Yeah. I just need a rest.
Yeah.
Can I get to sleep somewhere? Naps are good, apparently.
I mean, that's the main thing is just talking about it, getting the right help, you know. And that's what's great about pistols. You have resources. You got people that have been down that road and they've either found a good therapist or a good medication that helps them, or they have bad experiences and they share those too. And you can learn from other people and not have to have your own pitfalls, you know, when it comes to that, which was great. And that's one of the things I remember the first time I showed up in pistols. Like, I had so many questions about things that were happening and what my department might say to me or expect from me, you know. And I was able to go in to pistol and guys that were further along were say, hey, this is probably what's going to happen, and here's some of the things you need to look out for, you know, as far as how I need to protect myself with workers' compensation, you know. And so those were all things that I learned. And more than anything, it was the self-help, you know. Who's a good doctor? What are some things that worked to control my anger? what are some things that you did to reintegrate into society and not isolate? You know, because I sat on my couch for a year.
Yep.
Because of what was going on. You know, I had so much going on in my head that I didn't want to go outside. I isolated myself.
It sounds familiar.
I watched all seasons of Lost. That's how long I sat on my couch. And now
that was a good show to the middle of it, and then you just.
Well, now I think back on those times, and they were dark times.
Oh yeah.
Really dark, and I don't even remember really what this show was about. I've seen it before, but I couldn't tell you what I watched. You know,
that's because you weren't.
I was in my head.
It. Yeah.
What was playing in my head was the shootings I've been on, the murder suicides, all the terrible calls were just on display in my head, and I stared at the wall and watched that movie, and that's the exhaustion you're talking about. If that movie's playing in your head all day, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in mine, the 2012 Olympics were on, and what are those, like 18 days or 20 days or something like that? They were on the entire time when I was on my seat. They were on. I mean, when you're battling those screams, I was battling those screams and everything. Like I remember one time I'm thinking to myself, I was watching the Olympic Games, and I'm like, I just fucking screams. Like I didn't even hear the people cheering. I just screamed. That's all I heard. And you get lost in that, and you want it to go away, and you're like, why can't I make this stop? And you're at that point, you're just creating things to make it stop. Like I remember trying to focus so hard on the sound of the whatever the sport was going on, just the sound of the mechanisms that were going on. I called it blocking that sound, and I got really good at it because any noise that I heard, I would pick up. A pen hitting the paper, my wife hitting her phone because I hear the clicking of the phone. The more people that could talk, as long as it wasn't overload, I just needed that there. And in that position where you're sitting there and you're in your head, like you're battling your own mind at that point, trying to figure out how to fix a problem that no one else can fix for you.
And they can't see it either.
And then they can't see it, which makes it even fucking worse.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody ever, like, no doctor ever asked, but I think if a doctor said, point on your head in this map or on your head where the screams are, there's no fucking way I could do that. You know what I mean? I couldn't say it's right in the front, it's on the side. I can just tell you I hear them. Okay, what about on this map here? I can't fucking, it's all right here, all right
there. A map
here.
of your brain?
Yeah, like if somebody said to you,
you're crazy, Manny.
No, try, so
dude, you're crazy.
Your incident, right? Point to where it hurts.
I'm my whole head.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, when you come in and you're trying to explain to somebody, you don't have to do that in pistol.
No.
You don't have to say, like, I'm not going to ask you where does it hurt. You know, I'm not. Hey, where does it hurt?
That would be a dumbass question.
But I guarantee you, somebody would ask.
I'm gonna ask you that next week.
No, I'm gonna say that's a dumbass question. You can always come because we ask. I think that's probably why people don't ask questions, is because they don't want to ask a dumbass question. People have asked that before. Like somebody
was it me?
No,
because I'm sure it could have been me.
No, it was the dumbass attorneys for the city when they asked, you know, well, why do you hear her and no one else? And I'm like, because I was with her. Like, I don't know what you're asking. You know, why is it that my partner don't hear her screaming? I don't know, because he's working a dead baby. You know, I don't know what to tell you. You're the one that's supposed to tell me. The doctors are the one that's supposed to tell me. They can't even tell me. Mm. And that made me so angry because I'm like, why do I hear these screams, doc? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You went to college for 12 years. Isn't there some kind of book or some kind of...
You have this paper on the wall that says you're smart.
Yeah.
And you know stuff.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, Dr. Tapia would show me this chart of a brain scan.
Oh, she would show me that too.
Yeah, and she's like, you see where it's red? Because when I get triggered really bad or in the beginning, I would always rub the front of my head, right? Like the brow, If I get triggered, it's like this pain and burning in the front of my head. And I asked her when I'm like, I don't understand. It just right here, like it doesn't matter. And she's like, let me get this chart for you, you know. And
I think that's why she showed me the stupid chart.
And she's like, you see this right here? This is the frontal lobe cortex or whatever it's called. I'm like, I don't care. Fix it.
Yeah.
Don't show me. I know it hurts there, but fix it.
But sometimes you need an explanation for what's happening.
I didn't. I just wanted it over.
Yeah, but she gave it to me every visit.
Oh.
Not that I went a whole lot, but she was like, let me show you this. Let me show you that. Like,
don't care.
I know I can't remember stuff, but
yeah,
can you just
didn't
make it
care.
go away?
You know, if you broke your arm, do you care what the name of the bone is that broke? No, fix it. I mean, if I guess if you really wanted to, I didn't care. I just needed it to stop. Mm-hmm. And part of that is what you were saying about, you know, being tired. Like, we're exhausted.
I'm exhausted.
It's too much for us to comprehend. Our brains are just too fried at this point.
Speaking of being fried, let's wrap this shit up.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Pistol.org. That's all I can do right now.
So that pistol.org will give you information about who we are and how we can help. We are a Arizona, Phoenix area, mostly, nonprofit that does anonymous peer support for law enforcement that's suffering from acute stress or post-traumatic stress. And what we do is we have groups where people come in and can share anything with no repercussions. We don't ask about rank, age, names. We don't care about any of that stuff. We are an avenue for people to throw up some of the terrible things they see and feel and hear on duty. And that's kind of what we've been talking about today. So if you feel like you are struggling with some of the things you've heard, or you're not sleeping, or I don't know, more of the medical stuff, I would say go talk to your doctor. But if you kind of want to just make sense of it all and get some help, give us a shout out. And you can do that on our Facebook page. You can do it privately on email. You can also call.
Yeah, and the number to call is 480-524-9234. And just some of the external resources, the suicide hotline for Copline, 800-267-5463. Another one is West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat.
What?
And what were you saying, Brian?
Oh, if you want to donate to our cause.
Oh, the donate. Where's the donate button?
It's on our website.
Pistol.org.
Yeah, if you go to our website, there's a donate button. I think it's at the bottom. It could be closer to the middle. None of us are paid, not even the board members. We set it up that way. If we ever were to, it's a very minimal amount. But at this point, we're not getting paid.
This is by officers for officers.
Right.
That's all we're here for.
And we, the funds that we do have, we try to help the officers either with doctor's appointments. We're trying to set up a scholarship in honor of Carlos Ledesma. So if you do, check out our website. If you have questions about the podcast, good, bad, or indifferent, or you want us to talk about something specific, maybe it's specific to you, and you have some shame or embarrassment, as T has talked about, shoot us an email. What is it? info@pistol.org.
Yes.
If you send it there, we will bring it up, and hopefully we can address it. So until the next time, I think we're going weekly on these, right? Maybe?
Sure.
Sure.
So you're burned. So until the next time, we'll holler at you soon.
Nighty night.